Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Brett Olson here from Bethany Church. We're sad that some of you missed the in-person training we had this past Sunday, but I wanted to just give you a little bit of an update on what we talked about in that training so that you're ready to lead these casket empty groups coming up this week. So let me share my screen and we will get started. So here you see what I've called a facilitator guide. And I have these for each week of the study. I do have physical copies for you if you don't have one, if you couldn't attend the seminar, I do have that for you. But I will be sending out digital copies every week as well about these trainings for the study. And each week this will kind of walk you through what you need to go through with your group, as well as some additional details. You will notice that the week one guide is a little bit longer than the typical guides. The typical guides are about 2 pages. This one's about four. So this one just gives you a little bit more detail since it is your first week. We just want to make sure that your small group starts off on the best possible foot. So you'll see the first thing I have here in this week one guide is the before you meet section. And each week this will have just a list of things you need to do before your group meets. That could just be reading the section for the week, or it could be sending out an email or getting some more information, that sort of thing. So for this week one, before you meet, you will need to email your group the week before your meeting, which is at some point this week, um, just to introduce yourself and give them a little bit of what to expect coming into their week one meeting. I have sent all of you a copy of your most recent small group roster as of this morning. So if you have received any other signups since then, I'll send those out each morning. So you may be getting a couple more emails from me this week, depending on who else signs up for your group. But in that introductory email, you want to do a few things. You want to ask your group to read the introduction and chapter one in the Bible study guide before your first meeting. And the reason for that is these are only 9 week studies. You may see if you look through some of the materials that the Old Testament study for Casket MD is 18 weeks. And we've chosen just to split that up as a church, partly because of the holidays and Christmas and all that coming. And we wanted to do a special Advent series this year for Christmas. So we won't be having the sermon series go through Casket Empty in December, but partially because we viewed 18 weeks as just a huge commitment for both you as a facilitator and a participant. And we felt like people might not be as willing to commit to a study that long. So we chose to break it up. So this first 9 week study will start this coming week and go through the week before Thanksgiving. And then we'll have our Advent series, which will last a few weeks. And then we'll come back in January for the rest of the Old Testament study. And just because someone signed up for your study this time doesn't mean that they're signing up for the full 18 weeks. We marketed this as a 9 week study, so we want to keep it that way. So we don't want to pressure people to keep going with us for the remainder of the study. They can choose to do that if they'd like, the same way that you can choose as a facilitator if you'd like to continue or not. So we want to make sure that those expectations are very clear from the beginning. But in this email, you want to also remind them of any details you want to pass along about your meeting date, your meeting location, time, that sort of thing. If you're meeting at your home, you may notice that I didn't share your address with anyone in your group, just as a security concern. So you'll want to just share your address, and if you're meeting on a campus, you'll want to share your room that you're meeting, just so people know and have the best idea of where to meet as a group. And this next step is very important. You'll want to inform your group what they'll need for materials for the study. Each person, if they attended the Casket Empty seminar with Dr. Kaminsky a couple weeks back, received a timeline, a Bible study, and a map. You may have also received the study guide. If you are a facilitator and haven't received one of those, we do have some extras of those that I'd love to give you as a gift for facilitating. So if you need one of those, just let me know and I'll get that to you. Um, But in terms of what people will actually need to participate in this study, the three things that they really need are the timeline, the map, and the Bible study. And as a church, we've sold out of those materials. We ordered a certain number, and we said after that number, we're sold out. But you can purchase those materials on Amazon or ChristianBook.com or from Casket Empty directly at the Casket Empty website. So you want to make sure that people are aware that we don't have those materials anymore at the church, but that they can order online. So there's a couple ways for them to do that. So if you have not already, I would invite you to just send those emails out just so people have the most amount of time they can have possible to get those materials if they don't have them already, because we do want them to do week one before your first meeting. I have a little note here. Remember, you can use My Bethany to send any emails to your group. I'll be sending out another training video later on how to use My Bethany. That'll come possibly today or maybe later in the week. But I'll have a training on that, so we will cover that in that training. And I've just included kind of just a sample email later on in this page that you can use to kind of copy me if you want. I won't be offended if you steal this email and send it to your group, but you can do that if you wish. So you'll want to send out that email, and you'll also want to read the introduction in chapter 1 yourself. And you may want to refer to the preface and introduction in the study guide. As I said, the study guide just gives you more information on the events in a given chapter. So you want to you might just want to familiarize yourself with that material. It's something that's really important that I stressed at the in-person training, but I'll stress here too, is that as a facilitator, your job is not to teach this material. You're not giving a 30-minute lecture on creation or Abraham or Sinai or Kings or any of the material you'll find in the Casket Empty study. Your job as a facilitator is to simply ask questions and invite your group members to respond. If you think back to maybe some of your best small group experiences, I would venture to say that your best small group experiences didn't come from someone standing up in front of your group and teaching for 30 minutes to an hour. Your best small group experience probably came from the community you developed within your group, friendships that were formed, um, vulnerability that you were able to share openly with each other, things that you were struggling with, those sorts of things. And the community is really an important aspect of these groups, the ability to connect. So we want that culture to be evident in these groups as well. So your job isn't to teach this material, but it's to kind of just ask questions and get the conversation flowing. I'll mention this a little later in the training as well, but you want to make sure you have chapter 1 of the chapter 1 video that you'll find on the website ready to go. And you can find that video on our website or YouTube. I'll show you exactly where to find it later in this training, so you can find it that way. And if you're meeting at the church specifically and you need help with technology, you can contact me. I'll be happy to help you kind of sort through some of the maybe technological issues that you might have meeting at the church. So you can contact me if you need help with that. So here you'll find the sample email, and that just kind of covers everything I just went over with you. So you can read that on your own. Um, as I said, feel free to steal this and send it to your group if you want, or write your own. But as long as that material is covered, uh, I'm not going to be checking back and seeing if you sent that email directly. Um, so as long as you send an email, that would be great. So let's talk about your first group meeting. I'm sure you're coming into this video with a lot of questions on what your first meeting might be like. So let me kind of walk through what to expect in your first meeting. And you always want to kick off your group with an icebreaker question. If you attended my rooted training back in the winter of last year, you would be familiar with that. Icebreakers are really just a way to get the conversation flowing, and it's a perfect kind of starter for new groups or groups that have been meeting for a while. If you have a group that's particularly shy, you might want to ask a couple questions just to keep the conversation flowing. And you'll want to keep some of these in your back pocket for future weeks. I've given you a list of some um, popular icebreaker questions that I tend to come back to, but I'm sure you're much more creative than I am, so you can probably think of a couple other ones as well. So you want to start your group with an icebreaker question. Doesn't have to be Bible related. It can be something related to life, just to get the conversation flowing. This second thing is something that we found during Rooted was particularly valuable, and that was the share your story section of the study. You might remember opening up and the joy of hearing other people's stories during Rooted, and we wanted to give you a chance to do that again in these groups. Um, but be mindful that we're not talking about your full life story. We're not saying I was born in this year and then this happened and then this happened and then this happened. We're not giving a biography of ourselves. We're not writing the great American novel here. But we do want to answer the question, how did Jesus change your life? Or how did you begin your relationship with Jesus? That's kind of the question that you want to focus on as a new group who maybe haven't done this before and Rooted. And we want to give each person the chance to do this in their groups. Because part of Bethany's mission is to have 75% of people comfortable sharing their faith story. So we thought that these groups would be a great opportunity to do that. Because if you're sharing in a safe space among friends and fellow Christians, believers, you'll be much more comfortable sharing with people who maybe don't have the same point of view. So we want to give you an opportunity just to share these stories and to share the way that Jesus has changed you. Keep in mind that you may have people in your group who have not made a decision to follow Jesus yet. Um, so if that applies to someone in your group, if they feel a little uncomfortable or apprehensive with that sort of level of sharing, you might want to ask them questions like, what about Jesus interests you? Or have you ever thought about how God was working in your life? And what did that look like for you? Um, just kind of asking those types of open-ended questions that leads people to sharing. So if you were in a rooted group, if you're continuing with a group that you've had for a while, and you're kind of familiar with everyone's stories in the group, you may not want to do a full version of this again, but you may want to just to hear everyone's stories again. But if you choose not to do that, you could ask the question like, "How have you spotted God lately?" or "How have you seen God since our last meeting?" Just to get that similar kind of reflection and process going. Um, Again, this doesn't need to be long, but we would ask you to keep it under, I'd say, 10 minutes. I didn't give you 10 to 15 minutes here. I should have noted that the times in this facilitator guide and the times you'll see throughout the different weeks are not set in stone. It's not like if you go 15 minutes or 20 minutes on the share your story section that um, I'll come back and say, hey, what are you doing? But these are more just guidelines on how long to spend on each topic with your group. Um, so we want to try to keep this story under 10 minutes. Again, we don't want people sharing for half an hour, 45 minutes, 50 minutes on their life story because that can get awkward. But just spend a few minutes telling about your journey with Jesus and where you are in your faith. So during your first meeting, we want you to spend a few minutes, just like I just did, explaining that sort of process to your group. So you explain that process and then you share your own story as a facilitator. If you're co-facilitating with someone else, you may just want to decide amongst yourselves who's going first and maybe who's going second. Um, so I always think that it's great for the facilitator to kind of model that vulnerability in their group. So if you share your story first and people kind of get an idea of what to expect, um, they may be more comfortable sharing their own story. So I'd ask you to share your story first. And then once you're done, pray for your group and find a volunteer to share in your next meeting. As I noted in future weeks, depending on the size of your group, you may need to double up on these sharing your stories just to make sure that everyone gets the chance to do it. Again, this is only a 9-week study, so we want to make sure that everyone has the chance and the opportunity to share their story with their group. So next you'll find a reading plan, and I've given you reading plans for each week in this study, except for week 1. And the week 1 reading plan is coming. I'll send that out probably with this video, so by the time you're seeing this, you'll have the week 1 plan. But in each week of the facilitator guide, I'll give the reading plan for the following week of reading. And the reason I did that is because in the back of the book, it's listed kind of a selection of chapters that apply to this topic that Dr. Kaminsky is talking about this week. And you may know that the Casket Empty study isn't like you're starting in Genesis and going all the way through to Malachi, but it's more not topical, but more related to certain aspects of biblical history. So that the word casket is actually an acronym for creation, Abraham, Sinai, kings, exile, temple. And that is the acronym for what we would say are 6 really important markers in biblical history. And each of these words, creation, Abraham, Sinai, kings, exile, temple, would all have a few weeks devoted to each theme. And at the end of each chapter, there's between 5 and 6 chapters of reading in Scripture, both Old and New Testament, related to the topic of the week. At the end of the Bible reading, there's a section that you read, just kind of giving you a bird's eye view of this chapter. You read the Bible readings, and you have questions for reflection and application. So there's usually 5 or 6 chapters of Scripture per week, as I said. And then there's 1 or 2 or 3 questions that correspond with each passage. So in each of these guides, I'll recommend and break down to suggest to your group a few passages for that day and a few questions to answer. So you'll see, for example, in the week 2 guide, day 1, I ask you to read the week 2 chapter and read Genesis 1 and 2, respond to reflection questions number 1 and number 2, and also respond to application question number 1. So there's your chunk of reading for the day. And something you really want to stress to your group is that this is not homework. We're not asking, we're not having you double check on people's work. We're not saying, hey, you missed day 4 of the week 2 study. We're shaming you for that. We're deducting credit. It's not like this is a class that we're checking on your work. But we do want to emphasize that daily connection with God is part of being a disciple, and building time to connect with God and building these rhythms of daily devotion encourages that practice. So emphasize that it is not homework. You're not going to get in trouble if you miss a day or 2 there. We understand that life happens and things get in the way some days. But we do want to emphasize that connection with God is important, and we want to make this as accessible as possible. So each week, as I said, you'll see things broken down by the passage of scripture you read and the questions you respond to. The next section of your week 1 study is conversation starters. The Bible study provides great conversation starters for the first week that they call aptly conversation starters. That would be a great way to get your group talking about just kind of overall thoughts from the study. Unfortunately, they haven't continued those on past week one, but I've given you some examples of conversation starters that I've used with my groups in the past that have worked really, really well. So you'll see that in future weeks. So start with those conversation starters, chat about it for a few minutes, and um, and then move on to the week one study. We did want to build in as well some time for reflection on the seminar. We thought that the seminar that Dr. Kaminsky did a couple weeks ago was fantastic. It was well attended, and we had just a great response and a great day at that seminar. So we want to give you some time to kind of break that down and to kind of unpack some of the ways that you're thinking or feeling after the seminar. But also keep in mind that there are people in your groups that did not attend the seminar. So I would suggest keeping that conversation brief. With that said, I've given you a couple questions that you can use to guide this time. Don't feel like you need to answer all of them. Maybe pick out one or two that work for you, but you can choose to approach it that way. This next section of the training and this next section of the your group is probably the one that's going to draw the most possible questions and concern. So I want to spend a couple minutes talking about it. The week one video is Dr. Kaminsky's made these videos that you can talk about with your group that correspond with each week of the Old Testament study. So let me show you where you can find those videos. Um, Let me just change my screen to internet quickly. So here you'll see that I'm on the Bethany Church website. That this is where you'll find the videos for each week of the study. So if you scroll down to Casket Empty, you can click on the button that says Learn More. And you can either press on the button that says Study Videos, and that'll take you down to this menu here that has all of the videos listed, or you can just scroll down on the page and you'll find it. So the week one video is right here. So you can press on the video right here. I'll pause it because that probably just blew your eardrums out. Sorry about that. To full screen the video, you can just press on this square right here. That should full screen the video for you, like so. Or you can just click on the title of the video, which is up here, the one that says Old Testament Bible Study. You can click on that. And it'll take you directly to YouTube where you can watch this video together. So that's how you find and access the studies for the videos for the CASKET Empty study. Uh, if you think you'll have tremendous issue with that and don't want to show the video each week, You can send it out in an email to your group. You just need to copy the link from online and include that in your email so that they can watch it beforehand. We view these videos as very valuable, and you get teaching directly from Dr. Kaminsky, which is very valuable as well. So it will be informative for your group to watch, and we want to encourage you to watch it at some point, whether it's in your group meeting or outside. So you don't need to show the video every week, but this first week, I would highly recommend you show the video because it kind of gives a full picture of the study as a whole and gives you a good explanation of some of the resources like the timeline and the map that you'll use throughout the study. So this week one video, I would very much encourage you to watch. I give this little quick tip here. The video contains a lot of information that may feel overwhelming to your group, and encourage them that despite the initial challenge, that they can tackle the information and that the material will be discussed in detail over the next 8 weeks. Um, so what Dr. Kaminsky presents in this video will be what we will unpack for the rest of the study. So if you have group members who were saying, maybe scratching their heads and saying, I'm confused after that video, um, you don't need to be afraid or concerned. We'll cover that in detail over the next 8 weeks. And you want to spend time after the video ends debriefing the video together. I've given you some questions, and they're similar questions each week. What prompted questions, what excited you about it, and then you want to review the CASKET acronym together. Remember that C stands for creation, A stands for Abraham, S stands for Sinai, K stands for kings, E stands for exile, and T stands for temple. Now here is where you'll really get into the meat and potatoes of your study. This is the reflection and application questions that I mentioned earlier. These are the questions that you're responding to in the readings throughout the week. And before I say, there's no way that you'll be able to cover all of the material for the week. There's just too many questions, too much things that would cause um, too much discussion that would be really challenging for you to kind of cover everything in the course of one 30 to 45-minute group meeting. So that would be a challenge for you. Um, so you want to discuss some of the questions together. So choose some questions that stuck out to you as being important or valuable or prompting you to think about God or um, life in a certain way or in a new or fresh way, um, and bring those to your group. You may also want to say to your group up front during the week, hey, were there any questions or application points that stood out to you this week that you would want to discuss as a group? And they may have some ideas of questions that really stood out to them too, because you want, again, this to be a back and forth. You don't want to be teaching or responding the whole time. And throughout the week, you can feel free to tie in reflection questions from the sermon. Pastor Bruce will be teaching on each of these themes throughout Casket Empty. So he'll have thoughts that he gives in the sermon. He'll typically choose one passage that's listed out in the reading every week and choose to focus on that for his sermon. So there may be questions that come out of that that you might want to focus on in your group, or thoughts that he gives on Seize the Day. For those who might not know, Seize the Day is a daily devotional program that Pastor Bruce has done for a while now, Monday through Friday, on Facebook and YouTube. That starts at 8 a.m. And each of those days in his Seize the Day study throughout Casket Empty, he's going to be focusing on one of these questions that you can find in the Bible study. And if you want a little head start on maybe how he would approach some of those questions, you may want to tune in, or you can always catch it on YouTube throughout the week. You just need to go to the YouTube channel Bethany Church NH, and you'll find it under the live section, and you can catch up there on Seize the Day. So after you've talked about your reflection and application questions with your group, you're probably going to be running short on time. So you'll want to close your group time in prayer. And as I thought about prayer in groups, there's a few suggestions I would have on how to do that. There's not a cookie cutter answer of how I want you to pray as your group. You can choose whatever method of prayer might work best for you. And feel free to mix this up as well so that um, one method doesn't become too standard. You can mix and match from either the list that I've given you or come up with your own. These are some things that I've heard from small groups in the past that have worked really well. So you can feel free to use those. The first would be to take requests as one big group and ask for volunteers to pray for that specific request. For example, if I said that I was looking, um, that I had my brother or sister or someone in my family looking at college and I wanted to pray for them as an example for a prayer request, you would say, okay, who in the group wants to pray for Brett's family member looking at college? And you'll have a volunteer that volunteers to pray and they can pray for that. And as people share different requests, you get a volunteer for each person to share those requests. Another thing you might do, which I found out about from some other rooted leaders that were um, facilitating their group, was that they wrote prayer cards each week, and either the start of the meeting or the end of the meeting, they'd have people fill out those prayer cards, and before you left for the week, you would take one. And what I really like about that is that it prompts you throughout the week to pray for that person um, as they leave. So it becomes not something that you just do for an hour on a weeknight or a weekend, but it really prompts you to continue to pray for that person throughout the week. So that's something I really like about the prayer cards, and you might want to give that a try. The other thing that I've seen work really well in youth ministry and in other areas in the past is dividing your group into prayer partners that either rotate or stay the same each week. You may want to split off by gender or have them um, by specific age or stage if you have a multi generational group. But you might want to divide into prayer partners that either rotate or stay the same each week and have them split out in whatever area you decide to meet in your house or at the campus and pray together. The benefit of that is that um, it gives people a little bit more privacy and comfort in terms of sharing just with one person and sharing their requests together. I do have a note here that a couple things to remember is that some people are uncomfortable praying out loud, and that's okay. There's no need to force people to pray out loud if they don't want to. Also, if you feel like you don't need to be tied to the same method of prayer each week. As I said, you can feel free to experiment with different methods that might cater to different groups of people. And one thing that I want to stress at this point in regards to prayer requests or your sharing stories that you'll share a bit earlier in your group is the importance of confidentiality. There will be things that are shared in your group that perhaps the person that shared them might not want the world to know. Um, we want these groups to be a place where everyone feels safe and comfortable to share both what's going well in their life and things that they are struggling with. So um, we want these groups to be a place where people feel free to do that. And one of the ways that we can really attempt to do that well is through um, both accountability and why am I blanking on the word? Confidentiality. And one of the ways that we can really do that well is by encouraging both vulnerability and confidentiality. So that's one thing that I would go over with your groups immediately, really in week one, maybe right after you share your story. Um, that just sets the expectation right away that this what's said in this group kind of stays in that room. It's not something that they would go out and talk about amongst themselves on a Sunday morning with their friends or anything like that. But something that kind of is personal and stays within the group. Um, there are a few, what I would say, exceptions to that rule. If you feel like something that someone shares um, needs to be shared with a member of staff or a pastor or um, maybe referring out for something like counseling or something like that. That is an instance where you can share those details with me, and I will pass those along to appropriate channels. When we go over my Bethany training, I'll show you ways to do that. But you can also just email me directly at bolson, Olson, at bethanychurch.com. So if you find, hey, this is an issue that I find that it's kind of way over my ability to handle, send it to me and I will refer it to our care and support team or whatever other channel I need to share it with. So um, I did want to just mention the importance of confidentiality, but also if there's something that you feel like needs to be shared, I wanted to just give you background in how to do that. So your group is over. People have left. Maybe you've served food and the food's gone, and you're picking up. And what do you do after the group? What do you do after the group ends? And the thing that you really want to do, which I will show you in a future video, is take attendance within My Bethany. We have kind of a church directory slash backdoor processing system called My Bethany. It's just a website that you can log into, and you'll find information about your group and a way to do attendance and that sort of thing. We want everyone to do attendance within My Bethany. All of your groups are set up in such a way that you will receive an email after your group has met that gives you kind of a reminder to fill out attendance each week. I'll walk you through how to do that um, specifically in the next video. But it's really important for us that we are tracking these small groups and seeing, hey, who's engaged in these communities and who signed up but maybe isn't coming, or who started coming and then maybe has kind of petered off a little bit. We just want to track those sorts of numbers, so it's really important for us to be filling out attendance every single week. So as I said, you'll be getting an email attendance confirmation. If you find after the first week or two that you, for some reason, aren't getting that, contact me and I can help you out with that. Um, but yeah, that's really what we discussed in the meeting on Sunday. We want to make sure that these groups are going the best that they possibly can, that you feel as comfortable as you possibly can in facilitating these groups. So if you didn't come to the in-person training, I hope that this video has been helpful. If you came to the in-person training and are watching it again, just as a refresher, I hope that this was helpful as well. I am always available for a meeting or question, or if you find that you're stuck on maybe a certain week, or you're having trouble with attendance or anything related to small groups, really, I'm happy to help you. And you can contact me in a couple different ways. I'm going to give you my email address that you can use to email me. That's B Olson, again, Olson, at bethanychurch.com. So we hope that this video has been helpful for you. Um, Again, if you have questions about your group before you meet the first time, send me an email. Happy to answer those. But until next time, I'll see you in the next video and hope you have a great rest of your day.